Hey everyone, this is Fred, and welcome back to the Quantum Bits channel. In this new episode, I'm going to try something a bit different. No repair video, no funky upgrades to bring modern features to vintage computers. Today, we're taking things to the next level. And indeed, next is the right word because I'm going to build my own freaking NeXT computer. But enough chit-chat. Let's jump into it. So, what the hell are these NeXT computers? To understand the importance of this very special line of machines, let's rewind back to the late 70s at Apple Computers. Yes, we all know the story. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. How the Woz created the Apple I, and how the Apple II became a huge commercial success. So much a success that when Steve Jobs launched the Macintosh in 1984 with the failure of both the Apple III and Lisa, the Apple II was the real driving sail at Apple. Upon its launch, the first Mac was described as revolutionary, and it actually started a revolution. People fell in love with the idea of it, but the machine was ridiculously slow. At this time, John Sculley, the former president of Pepsi-Cola, was Apple CEO. He was famously hired by Steve Jobs saying, "Do you want to sell sugared water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" And oh boy, he changed the world. But definitively not as he expected. Because when Sculley saw the sales figures, he forced him out of Apple. The news made, of course, the headlines, and journalists, as they often do, took a bit of pleasure at describing the fall from grace of the prodigal son. But Jobs is not exactly the kind of person to lay low. Apple was the past. In 1985, he created what he thought would be the next big thing. For years, his team worked on what would be the next step for the computer industry. The company would be called NeXT, and the operating system would be known as NeXTStep. In '88, he was finally ready for his great comeback. In a lavish event, he introduced to the world something so radical and so ahead of its time that it would be the next landmark for computers. Fresh out of his brand new, fully automated factory, this landmark would have the shape of a black magnesium cube. The next computer, nicknamed the Cube. The NeXT Cube was a workstation computer. It consisted of a 1-foot die-cast cube-shaped black case. It was designed around a Motorola 38030 CPU. Its operating system was based on the Mach microkernel and BSD-derived Unix system. Its unique and very ahead of its time's graphical interface was based on display PostScript. Unix multitasking, object-oriented development tools, network native, and friendly interface. This was a dream come true. But the dream didn't last long. Even though new models were launched, like the NeXTstation or the Turbo variants, as a hardware company, NeXT did not succeed. It is estimated that only 50,000 machines were sold. The real gem was software. In late 1991, NeXT started turning itself into a software company. They started porting NeXTStep to other hardware. First, the Intel PC platform, then to the PA RISC and SPARC-based hardware. In 1996, Apple was a complete mess. Their operating software was going absolutely nowhere, and they started looking for alternatives like BOS. But in the end, Apple bought NeXT. The main purpose was to use NeXTStep as a foundation for their next operating system. In 2000, Steve Jobs took back the CEO position, and you all know the story. Even though it was a failure, the legacy of NeXT is very strong. To this day, NeXTStep is still very much at the heart of what Mac OS X is. The NeXT Cube itself had a huge impact. Though it was not a commercial success, this workstation was loved in universities and research centers. So much that it was used at CERN for the development of the first web server. The NeXT Cube is the machine that initiated the web revolution. Let's take a look at the NeXT computer's timeline. The NeXT Cube was released in 1998. Initially, it was aimed at the U.S. higher education institutions. It used a Motorola 68030 CPU, clocked at 25 MHz, packed with up to 16 megabytes of RAM, a magneto-optical drive, and a 17-inch grayscale display. It also included a Motorola DSP chip on the motherboard. In 1990, a very different pizza box form factor was used for the second-generation NeXTStation, based on a 040 CPU. It was followed the same year by the NeXTStation Color that included a high-resolution color display. In 1991, the NeXT Dimension board was released for the original NeXT to drive color monitors. It was followed in 1992 by the NeXT Turbo, as well as the NeXTStation Turbo and the NeXTStation Color Turbo with higher clock frequency. In Europe, the first NeXT arrived in 1990. As a physics student, I was fascinated. I already had the chance to work on Unix workstations, mostly HP 9000s. But the NeXT was pure magic. Around 1993, a NeXT Center opened very close to my university. Of course, there was no chance I could afford one of these expensive beauties. But ever since, I dreamed of owning one. 30 years later, I'm still looking for one. They're very rare, at least in France. And the prices are absolutely bonkers. Whether it is a full NeXTStation, a monitor, or parts, it is pure madness. I kind of lost hope until I discovered this website. Nina Richards is a remarkable British designer. On her website, she details how she built a mini replica of a NeXT computer. She used photographic references to design the most realistic parts. Her intent was to host a Raspberry Pi 3 to run a web server, like the NeXT did at CERN. I fell in love with her design, and it gave me this idea. Could I tinker her model? Fit a more recent Raspberry Pi to run a NeXT computer emulator? For my little experiment, I ordered a starter kit for Raspberry Pi 5. For the record, all this was filmed over a year ago, before RAM price explosion, when this kind of kit was still affordable. The kit contains all what I need for the project: a USB-C power supply, HDMI cables, an active cooler, a 64GB SD card, a SD card reader, a case, and an 8GB Raspberry Pi 5. Setting up the Raspberry Pi is pretty straightforward. Download the Raspberry Pi Imager. Stick the SD card into the reader. Run the Imager software. Select your device and options. About 10 minutes later, I had a Raspberry setup up and running. Pretty simple so far. Good. The next step is finding a proper emulator. Fortunately, there's an emulator called Previous. Based on the Atari emulator for Atari ST 16-bit machines, it allows modern computers to simulate Motorola-based NeXT hardware as authentically as possible. At the time of filming, Previous was not packaged for the Raspberry Pi, but it is an open-source project and can be built from sources easily, given a few required dependencies are installed. The second part is to get the NeXTStep operating system. For this, you can take a look at the WinWorld Online Museum. You will find here pre-packaged images with the required ROMs. If needed, you will also find a ROM of the NeXT Dimension board on the nextcomputers.org website. You may also want additional software, like the ones hosted on the FSCK Technology Preservation site. All the required links are in the video description. Let's take a look at the WinWorld archive. Inside, you will find the ROMs needed for the different NeXT hardware, as well as a disk image of a pre-installed version of NeXTStep for the Motorola architecture. Let's move on and install the whole thing on the Raspberry Pi. The first step, obviously, is to upload the source code, the ROMs, and the disk image. The second step is to install the various dependencies needed to compile the source code. Then, it is time to prepare the build. Finally, we can build the emulator from the source code. And there we go. Right there is the binary for the emulator. Before running it, we must do a bit of configuration. Setting up the path for the disk image. Setting up the various paths for the ROMs, including the one for the next dimension card. Let's run the emulator. Right off the bat, you will see an interface which would look familiar to the ones used to the Atari emulator. From there, you can check the initial configuration and make any change you want. Let's click OK and start the emulator. Oh my God, it worked! Gosh, the NeXTStep desktop running on a Raspberry Pi. Very, very cool. Now that we've got the hardware and the software, let's build our model. All the STL files are freely available from Nina Richards' website and on Thingiverse. There's one small problem though. Nina's model is designed for an old Raspberry Pi, and a new one won't perfectly fit inside. But that's no big deal. I used Tinkercad to slightly modify the back cover for the project. I did not have yet a 3D printer, so I used PCBWay services, and a couple of weeks later, I received the package. To be clear, this video is not sponsored by PCBWay, but full disclosure, I was contacted by them a couple of months ago, long after this project was finished. I'll comment on my own, whether good or bad. Anyways, let's open the package. Okay. Everything is in this little bag. Oh, it seems that the print is already assembled, and it is protected by another wrap. Nicely done. Wow. Yes, they assembled all the parts together before shipping. Oh wow, it is gorgeous. I absolutely love it. Very, very good. Now let's see if I made any mistake with the design. Does a Raspberry Pi case fit? Yes, it does. Marvelous. What about the cable paths? They fit nicely. Wonderful. As a finishing touch, I printed out a little sticker. Not bad. I'm very, very happy with the result. Let's take our NeXT Mini for a spin. Logging into the system. Yep, it's still perfectly working. Off camera, I added a few extra software and productivity tools to the installation image. Let's explore NeXTStep, starting with configuration, administration, and tools. The Preferences app would certainly look familiar to Mac OS X users. There you can change settings for mouse, keyboard, date, localization, and so on. Being based on a Unix kernel, NeXTStep is network native. There is of course a mail app where you'll find a welcome message from Steve Jobs himself. NeXTStep was also known for its pre-installed Webster app with dictionary and thesaurus functionalities. NeXTStep is also a multimedia operating system. It includes a preview app, which will also look very familiar to Mac users. There is no Unix system without a shell. It is provided here by the Terminal app. Network configuration is made easy with a specific set of admin tools. Let's take a look at productivity apps, starting with Lotus Improv. Lotus was famous for Lotus 123 spreadsheet for MS-DOS. On the NeXT, Improv was a radical change from DOS interface, with a user experience that only will be matched years later. Adobe Illustrator was also available and took advantage of all the power of display PostScript. FrameMaker was a big deal for researchers and universities. It was a powerful desktop publishing tool specialized in science and technical documentation. It was specifically optimized for NeXTStep. WordPerfect was also available, bringing state-of-the-art word processing to Unix workstations. For the scientific tools, I will focus on Mathematica. It is a computing software system used for mathematical calculations, data analysis, and visualization. Early NeXT workstations shipped with Mathematica pre-installed for education. It may sound weird, but it brings me back so much good memories. NeXTStep also shipped with a bunch of demos. There was, of course, a Mandelbrot Explorer. It was meant to be a demonstration of the onboard DSP for calculus. There was also a nice little molecule visualizer. And there was a chess game, which is pretty much the same as the one on today's Mac. But one of NeXTStep's most important outcomes was its development tools. Interface Builder, which is now part of Xcode on Mac OS X, was born on the NeXT. It is a software development tool that provides palettes of user interface objects. To build an interface, a developer simply drags objects from the palette and connects them with actions. It was new, radical, and powerful. It made software development on NeXT so easy that it initiated a technical revolution. I'm speaking about the World Wide Web, invented at CERN by Tim Berners-Lee. That's where my personal story intersects with the big story. I was at CERN during this incredible era as a young particle physicist. CERN is the European Organization for Nuclear Research. Its main function is to provide the particle accelerators and other infrastructure needed for high-energy physics research, including calculus and network capabilities. And it is the birthplace of the web. The first ever website was hosted on this NeXT cube. Isn't it magnificent? By today's standard, the first web page may not look like much, and I may sound like an old fart, but that is what started it all. During my PhD, my home research institute was located at Lyon University. Our calculus center was located just a few blocks away. It was there that was pioneered the first French website, which, you guessed it, was also hosted on a NeXTcube computer. This is what it looked like in 1992. I still remember accessing it via the Lynx text-only browser from a VT100 terminal. And this is what the page of my home institute looked like in '93. I have a vivid memory browsing this site using the Mosaic graphical browser from an X terminal. 30 years later, let's relive these memories, but from the mini NeXTcube. Off camera, I installed the Omni web browser. First, let's try FrogFind. In case you didn't know, FrogFind is a minimalist search engine and web proxy designed to let vintage computers browse the modern internet. It was created by Sean from the amazing Action Retro YouTube channel. Good, everything is running fine. Totally normal web browsing. Now let's access the first web page from CERN. Nice. Now, let's browse the first French web page. How cool is that? Let's conclude this tour of NeXTStep on a funnier note. What about games? Well, actually plenty of games were ported to NeXTStep, including Tetris, Solitaire, and even a ZX Spectrum emulator. Because Isn't there anything better than playing Night Lore on an emulator running inside an emulator? We spoke about the historical importance of NeXT in the creation of the web. But did you know it was also related to Doom? Indeed, ID Software was using a NeXT Cube for the development of its graphical engine. Technically, Doom existed on NeXTStep before the DOS version existed. So, if you were asked, can NeXTStep run Doom? The answer is, of course it can. I hope you enjoyed this little experiment. Creating this mini NeXT Cube was a lot of fun, and it actually gave me ideas. Indeed, since the time this video was started, I bought my own 3D printer. From there, I ran down into a rabbit hole. I created a mini B-Box computer replica and installed BOS on it. Alas, this was just the beginning of a new madness, because I created also a mini IBM PS2 replica and installed MS-DOS, then Windows 3, then Windows 95, and Windows 98, and of course OS 2. I may need help. Anywho, if you enjoy this kind of creations, let me know in the comments for future videos. Thank you for watching this video. If you like it, you can give it a thumbs up or even subscribe. Feel free to add any comments. See you very soon on the next video.